when it comes to the TV show The Gentleman, I'm going to be completely honest and say I really had a fun time watching it for many reasons. Starting off with the characters, I really loved the majority of them, starting with the protagonist all the way to characters that don't have the most amount of scenes, like the Gospel. I found the plot to be very hooking, with a lot of twists and manipulations throughout. We're never really learning what a character's true motives are. Something also intriguing was the violence in this show, as whilst there is a lot, we're not actually seeing it, which kind of leaves a mark on the audience, as we're somewhat using our imagination to wonder how violent what the characters are witnessing or doing truly is. And I think that was a great way to show off the violence. Something else I really enjoyed is that through this show we explore so many types of gangs and criminals, not just a singular one, starting with scouse cartels to travellers who export drugs in and out of the country, to London money launderers, and even Russian gangsters. I enjoyed that there was a variety, it wasn't just a singular gang. This is something small which I really did enjoy, is the soundtrack of this show, as for most British type gangster films we have the same sort of soundtrack, whilst this one was very much different and makes it very unique compared to the others, and that being it's British but it's also modern, as a lot of these songs I would say are quite underground, or at least don't get the radio performance that a lot of the other songs get, and it really adds to the show. I just liked how British but different it was compared to the others. Visually, this show does have some great scenery, whether it be the location or just the visual camera work as well. We do get great shots in each and every episode, which I think is great to see, as a lot of shows don't do this a lot and they just stick to the basic camera angles, whilst this show, it did a little bit extra in each episode. And lastly, I will say there was some funny moments in this show, whether it be in the dialogue or the visuals or costume aesthetic. Now when it comes to the finale, I will say it was enjoyable, but I was quite annoyed / disappointed in the beginning, as we are building up to what could be an action-packed scene, yet it is cut away, and sadly I felt as an audience member robbed of what could have been an amazing action sequence. But after this we get a really good episode filled with manipulation, murder, and what I would say is a strange but intriguing way to end it. Now this show is not without its criticisms. The one and main big criticism I have is, to me, it's not that funny. The main humour throughout this show is just posh people swearing, which I'm not the biggest fan of in and of itself, and so when we have this continue on, it becomes more and more tiring. And I have to say I was really disappointed with the lack of humour in this show, as I was such a huge fan of the film because of its humour. But I will say, whilst the show lacked in humour, it made up more in the drama and the plot. My second criticism is about the predictability of the episodes. I have to say the first 5 episodes were very predictable in what's going to happen, what a character's going to do, and I just found it a bit of weak writing. It could have been a bit more convoluted, but nevertheless. But as it gets to episode 6, that's when the tables turn, and I really found it to be very hooking. How you think a character is predictable, but when really their motives are completely different to what you would expect. And I found that to be very hooking, and the last 3 episodes did that exceptionally well. My next critique is, I personally felt the first 2 episodes of the show to be the weakest. Funny enough, written and directed by Ritchie of all people. Those episodes didn't really give much to explore. It felt very limited in what it was, and the writing just got much better, and I felt like the show allowed itself to grow from episode 3 onwards, and those 2 episodes really held it back. Now this is a very small nitpicky critique, and that is the subplots of this show. I found them to be kind of boring and not necessary. The main one being with Jeff, played by Vinnie Jones, and the youngest daughter of the family. Now I know they're trying to build up Vinnie Jones's character, and fair play to them. I just think it wasn't that interesting, but compared to the other subplots, it didn't take up much of the time, so again, it's a very nitpicky thing. Now my last criticism is about the connection to the film. Now I feel like this is more of a remake than being in the same universe, which I'm not too mad at, but at the same time it was advertised as somewhat being in the same universe universe as the film, and so I was at least hoping maybe hearing about characters from the film or somewhat connections, but we don't hear any characters or other gangs from the film being mentioned in the TV show, so that's why I think it's more of a remake of the film than actually in the same universe. Overall, I really did enjoy this show. Whilst I thought it had a bit of a weak start, as the show continued, it became very much hooking, with them exploring not only the characters further, but the world itself, and it does have a lot of intriguing moments. And whilst I would say this show doesn't have the humour or most memorable characters that the film had, it's still enjoyable nonetheless. Is it good? I'm going to be honest and say yes, it is great. Rating wise, it is an 8 out of 10. Now when it comes to would I rewatch it, the answer is yes, I would 100% rewatch this. This one has got me going and looking back at the film, which I think is a good job of itself. I can 100% see myself watching this in a few months' time. That's how good this show was. Now when it comes to recommendations, I'm going to start off with the film, which I'm going to be completely honest and say is far superior to the show, just through the acting and the story and humour. Definitely would recommend that. Next, I'm going to be honest and say I'm not the biggest Guy Ritchie fan, but putting that to the side, I will say he has got some great films. One of my favourites being Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. I really enjoy that because not only because of the plot, but the expanding universe we get as the film continues on. The late 90s and early 2000s had a lot of British gangster films thanks to Guy Ritchie, and my favourites of those are Love, Honour, Obey, which Ray Winston is in and does a great performance. The film itself is very funny, and as well as that, it is very action-packed. My next one is 51st Date. I mainly enjoy that film because of the odd pairing, that being with Samuel Jackson and Robert Carlyle of all people. For a more modern take on the British gangster scene is the TV show Brassic, which I think does really well, as it adds a bit of emotional maturity that those others didn't get to explore. And this show really does have a lot of emotional moments, which I really think makes a very impactful development on the show, but putting that to the side as well, it is also very silly and very funny. Those are my recommendations. This has been my review for the TV show The Gentleman. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like and subscribe, but most importantly, thank you and have a nice day.